When I got to church a few Saturday mornings ago, about a month ago in fact, I did what I do every Saturday morning. I walk around and unlock all the doors. And then I go to the kitchen and I mix my beet juice and my green juice together. Then I come back to my office and I read through my emails. Most of them were junk emails, so I simply hit the delete button. But as I worked my way down the inbox, I saw an email from one of my favorite people, a person I used to run with, a person who doesn't come to church here, but someone for whom I have deep, deep respect. And so when I saw her name, I immediately opened it, anxious to see what was on her mind. While I sipped on my morning cocktail, I read through her email. But when I finished reading the email, I sort of wish I hadn't opened it. It's not how I wanted to start Saturday. The email was all about the recent school board meeting where there was some heated discussion about the state's new anti-discrimination protection law for students in public schools and how the District of Guilford was going to deal with this issue. I wasn't at that meeting and I was glad I wasn't. But in the aftermath of that meeting on the first Monday of September, I received a flurry of emails and a fair amount of feedback from different people about that night. Now, the emailer, my dear friend, wondered two things. Would our church welcome a transgendered child? And would I be willing to come to the next board meeting? With my heart pounding, I reread the email. I spent the next 15 or 20 minutes pacing up and down the hallway. This was more than I wanted to think about on a Saturday morning, my day off. Now, the first part was easy. I know we would welcome anyone. I was told that before I was hired. I can't remember who on the search committee said this, but someone said, we are the Guilford Community Church. If you're a part of the community, we would welcome you without reservation or hesitation. Even our employee manual makes it clear that we don't discriminate on the basis of any sexual grounds. And over the years, over my almost 18 years here, I've been so proud at how you've welcomed everyone. Our church council and none of our church committees have ever excluded anyone because of their sexual orientation or identity. So kudos to all of you. And I know that some people here struggle with that issue, but you've been gracious and welcoming as well. And I applaud, too, our friends from the Methodist Church just down the street, who made it clear recently, despite what the Universal Methodist Church voted, that this Methodist Church would welcome anybody. That part was easy. But when I come to the next school board meeting, that's the part that got to me. You see, at the core of my being, I'm a coward. I don't like conflict. I like to please people. I hate to disappoint anyone. I like to be liked. So sometimes I'd rather bury my head in the sand than really take a stand. When I'm downstairs at coffee hour, sometimes the conversation turns political. I usually walk away. So every night since that email arrived a month ago, from 1 o'clock till 3 o'clock in the morning, I've tossed and turned in my bed. Different thoughts racing through my mind. Should I go? And if I do, should I say something? I certainly don't want to stir things up. Things are going too well for this church. And God knows at my age, I don't want to lose my job. Who would hire a minister who turns 60 at the end of this week? But when people I hardly know ask me what I think about an issue, when I hear from some of you that others are talking about this in the community, even at Hannaford's, a stranger approached me and said, "You're the minister, right? What do you think?" And when the popular perception is that churches are not welcoming and affirming places, I think maybe I should say something. For to be silent is too often to be complicit. And so the past couple of weeks, I've read 6 different books on the issue. I've read dozens of different articles by medical professionals, and I've listened to the stories of transgendered people. I have a lot to learn, but I've certainly had my heart touched and my eyes opened. Thinking about these things, something occurred to me, a couple of things. Many of you, but not all of you, know that our son CJ was gay. Sorry. We sang that song. I was there to hear your boy cry at his funeral. So CJ came out to us 1 month before I started working here. Had we known 2 months earlier, we wouldn't have come. I would have declined the offer to be your pastor. You see, CJ was loved by everyone in our church in Methuen. It was a safe place for him. And the school system was unbelievably supportive. But by the time he came out, things were really set in stone. We'd purchased land, we were having a house built, and we really had our hearts set on coming. But I was a nervous wreck. I imagine that many of you would think thoughts like this. Oh, the new pastor has some baggage, doesn't he? This is more than we bargained for, Michael. I wondered and worried what you would think. I wondered how CJ would be treated here and in the school system. New Hampshire is not the most open-minded state in the union, after all. Now, I started in May of 2002, but the rest of my family didn't move until our house was finished in September. And so on Sunday morning, CJ and Cindy would drive up. My second or third Sunday, the pastor's son showed up with blue hair. The next week, it was turquoise. When I saw him come in the door, I about died. Had I been robeless, you'd have seen my heart beating and my shirt would have been wet with sweat. Thankfully, there were people here like Patsy Moore and Faith Rupert who embraced him from day one regardless of the color of his hair. But beyond the walls of this building, his experience was mixed. He had some wonderful teachers like Lynn Makepeace and good friends like Kristen Murphy. But not everyone was that way. When CJ was a senior at Guilford High School, he had dreadlocks. Again, another trying moment for the old man. But one day while he was seated at a table in the cafeteria, someone came up behind him, and with a pair of scissors, they cut a dreadlock out of his hair. And then that person ran around the cafeteria laughing. I don't want any child to experience that because they're labeled different. You know, one of the saddest things I learned the last couple of weeks is that children who grow up in the church who aren't straight suffer twice the amount of depression as those same kids, non-straight kids who don't grow up in the church. That means if you're gay or transgendered, you're better off not showing up in a place like this. That breaks my heart, and it shouldn't be that way. And the suicide rate among transgendered kids is over 40%. And over 40% of teens who are homeless are transgendered. Most of them kicked out of their family by religiously convicted people, parents. Tomorrow night, I imagine things will get a bit heated. And whenever tempers flare, people become so passionate about their personal stance on a topic, we often don't pause long enough to consider the other perspective. And sadly, too many churches are as polarized as our country is. Churches on the right, quick to condemn any youth who is different. And churches on the left, quick to demonize anyone who dares to disagree with them. So here's what I hope. Well, I hope I'm still your pastor next week. But I hope that we might model a different way of being a community, of being human, where people can sit around tables with people with whom they deeply disagree, but do so seeking to understand the other person. I want to build bigger tables, not bigger walls. Ignorance and fear are almost always joined, and fear leads to demonizing, closed hearts and closed minds. But we have an opportunity to do things differently. First of all, to say that we will always stand with the demonized until the day the demonizing stops. But we'll do that with humility, because none of us has it all figured out. And most of us, probably all of us, have some blind spots. Most of us are too quick to bend the knee to what our tribe tells us to think, and we don't think for ourselves. I know for certain things to learn from those of you who disagree with me. And maybe you have a thing or two to learn from me. And here's another thing I know, that I haven't always felt the way I do this morning. My thinking has evolved over time. I used to be pretty quick to demonize those whom society or my church labeled as different or unclean. I used to use the Bible like a hammer. So change is always possible. And I'm guessing that most of us in this room really don't understand the issues. We probably never knowingly have interacted with someone transgendered. Yet most of us, despite our lack of knowledge, have opinions. And if you think about that, that's probably the most irresponsible position we can have. To have convictions without having an informed opinion. And when we don't have knowledge, maybe the best place for us to be is to simply say, I don't know yet, and withhold judgment. And I also believe with every fiber of my being that every single person in this room, every single person loves all of the children, not only in this church, but in our community. And I think we long for the day when no one sends vicious tweets saying something they would never have the courage to say face to face. I want to be a community that wholeheartedly affirms that we can't love God if we can't love the people we see. I want to be a place that is committed to working out that great American ideal, an ideal that we've never yet lived up to, that we were all created equal, that we're endowed with certain inalienable rights by our Creator, and that among these rights are life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. I hope our work here as the church can nudge our community and our world a little closer to the ideals we profess. And if you ever want to talk about this, stop by my office. Come to our study group on Thursday. We're going to begin talking about this in the next few weeks. But let's always commit to worshiping, to working, and talking together. Amen.